My name's Nate Vance, and I'm here to discuss firearms selection for women. Now, one of the first and most important things that you can discuss when selecting a firearm is which caliber to use. Now, if you go to a gun store and you talk to somebody, they're probably going to steer you in the direction of a 380 ACP. I'll get into what that means here in a second. But typically, that's a very, very small bullet, right? That's a very small, underpowered bullet. Now, I don't know why, but there seems to be a feeling that most women can't or won't handle the same types of calibers that men can. That's ridiculous. Don't let a salesman tell you that. It's not true. But I am going to go through and discuss some of the positives and negatives regarding some bullet designs for certain applications. So I'm going to zoom in on a little small cross section of the arguably hundreds of different caliber sizes that are available out there. So let me start zooming in here. Now, going from smallest to largest, I'll start out here with this one is the 22 long rifle. This is the 5.7 made by FN. This is a 9mm Luger, a 40 caliber. This is the 45 automatic Colt pistol. This is the 500 Magnum. And these two over here are not pistol bullets at all. They're actually rifle bullets. And I left them up there because I'm going to use them to explain something here in a second. Now, let's even remove the 500 Magnum. That's a very specific purpose. It's a very difficult round to handle in a pistol. As a matter of fact, it's shot out of a gun that's so large that is basically just should be considered unwieldy and unnecessary. Right? It's for very specific purposes like hunting and things like that. It's not not intended for self-defense purposes. So if you notice though, there's a very distinct difference between hunting high-powered rifle rounds and pistol rounds, right? Pistol rounds are very anemic. They're very small in general. So they don't necessarily have the power that's required to cause immediate incapacitation right away. So anytime you're using a pistol to defend yourself against an assailant, you need to consider the fact that you will probably need to shoot him or her more than one time in order to make them fall down, if they're determined. So starting here with the 22 long rifle, let's talk about this for a sec. The 22 long rifle gets no credit. Now, it is very, very underpowered, don't get me wrong, but it can and will and has killed many people throughout history. Do not knock this thing. If recoil is something that you just abhor, you can't stand recoil, you don't like it, the 22 long rifle is completely acceptable to defend yourself with. Say if you're a tiny person, right? You're better off with a 22 long rifle than you would be with your hands. Make sense? Then moving up here, you have the 5.7, the FN57. This is a great round. It is extremely fast shooting for a pistol, but it's very small, so it produces very little recoil. However, the issue with this is the weapons that fire it and the bullets themselves are difficult to come by. So if you're a new shooter, I would tend to stay away from this because it's more of a novelty boutique type item in the gun world than it is practical, because it's going to be difficult to come by components and things like that. Then moving up slightly, you have the 9mm Luger. Gets its name from the Germans, right? That's pretty much who came up with it, and that's what they shot out of their Luger handgun during World War II. The 9mm, I believe, is very underrated. Right? It is a very capable bullet to stop someone from doing something you don't want them to do. However, in the modern day, and with masculinity being what it is, the concept that bigger is always better kind of tends to ring true when most people are giving advice on what bullets to get for a firearm. Moving up slightly from there, you have the 40 caliber, which is slightly wider, and that's when you hear calibers, there's all these numbers that apply to the bullet. What it refers to is the width of the bullet at its widest point. So A 22 caliber is 22 1/100ths of an inch wide, but then you have metric. So a 9mm is 9 millimeters wide. So you can almost determine what continent the bullet was developed on based on what number is used to describe its width. Metric, European, standard, caliber, the decimal point, typically American. So you have the 40 and then the 45. Now all of these are very capable rounds at defending while defending yourself. So I'm going to zoom back out again, and while zooming out I'll explain that all of these bullets are capable of being used as defensive rounds. But the important thing to consider is, like I mentioned with the 5.7, availability. How easy are they to come by? If you're going to practice like you should if you're a new shooter, if you can't get the bullets very easily, you're not going to be able to practice as much. It's not going to do you much good. And then moving up to the 45 is also very easy to get, but it's slightly more expensive than the 9mm, and you have to consider magazine capacity. Like I said, you're probably going to have to shoot somebody more than once, and if you're shooting at someone and you're in fear for your life, your ability to perform intricate, refined motor skills is not going to be as good as they would be sitting at the range. So you're probably going to miss. You're probably going to miss more than you hit, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, while the 45 does deliver more power, more energy onto the target, it also produces more recoil. They weigh bullets, and their mass is measured in a unit of measurement called grains. So you'll see on a box of bullets, 9mm Luger, 115 grain bullet. Now, the amount of recoil that's produced is directly related to the amount of mass that is going forward. So in other words, for every action, you have an equal and opposite reaction. So if you're holding a gun and you shoot a bullet out the barrel, the gun is going to want to move the opposite direction with an equal and opposite amount of force that the bullet is moving with. So taking that into consideration, the 45 typically shoots a 230 grain round. It's literally twice the mass of a 9mm. Now that delivers twice the energy, but again, coming back to the fact that if you are a new shooter, recoil is something that you're going to have to learn to tame. So you have more recoil with a 45, which means that it's going to take longer to get follow-up shots on target. And you have less bullets to deal with. You have less bullets to use at your disposal to eliminate whatever threat you're dealing with. So there are, like I said, hundreds of different bullets out there. I, in my personal opinion, would tend to steer more towards the 9mm. A 380 is actually a 9mm if you convert it to the metric system, but the 380 was developed in the United States. I don't have one here, but a 380 the only difference between it and a 9mm Luger is the fact that the 380 has a shorter case, which means less gunpowder, which means that the bullet is not coming out of the barrel as fast, and it means it doesn't have as much power when it hits the target. The 9mm Luger, however, while it has more power, it doesn't have so much power that it generates an unmanageable amount of recoil for a new shooter. So if I had to make one selection, which I hate doing because it all boils down to personal comfort. Now, like my sister, for example, she can shoot the 500 Magnum. I don't know that she enjoys it, but she can do it. So it's not like a woman can't handle any one of these things. But if you're going to find the best of both worlds, I think the best of all the worlds that you can think of lies on the 9mm Luger for a new shooter using a weapon in a personal defense scenario. You have a much higher magazine capacity, far less recoil. It's easier to manage, cheap and easy to find to practice with, and you just end up with an all-around capable gun in a 9mm. That doesn't mean that it's better for everybody, but I think for a new shooter, that's a pretty good place to start. And if I were you, that's where I'd lean towards in the very beginning. So there are more things to consider when purchasing a new firearm. I'm just focusing on ammo selection right now, what caliber you should use. Like I said, you need to weigh all of the considerations yourself. If you're going to rent guns and shoot them before you purchase, shoot different calibers and see which one you like the best. But consider magazine capacity, consider, you know, recoil and follow-up shots, because you're probably going to need them. Consider all of those things, and I think the majority of you will come to the same conclusion I have, that the 9mm is a pretty good bet. Other than that, stay tuned for more videos on the next one I'm going to go over is frame selection and how to determine which gun frame size is the best for your hand. And God bless America and be safe.